Good morning. Welcome to First Chapter Fridays. I'm Miss Karen, the children's librarian at the Oakmont Carnegie Library. Today I'm in the stacks with the juvenile fiction, so I do move around the library a little bit. You can come on down and check it out if you get a chance. I am talking about the Spiderwick Chronicles series today. I have books 1 through 5 behind me so you can see them. Some of you might be familiar with this series. This is a fun series for this time of year because it has a little bit of spooky to it. Here's a picture of the series. Also, of the three Grace children, Jared has always been thought of as the troublemaker. So when strange things happen after his family's move to a relative's dilapidated estate, sister Mallory, twin brother Simon, and their mother assume that Jared is behind it all. However, magical creatures roam the grounds, and they all want a special book that Jared has found, a field guide to fantastic creatures, penned by Arthur Spiderwick. All right, so if we grab the first book, see what book 1 looks like. It's called The Field Guide. Jared looked around the room. You can see a little picture there. That's like the synopsis at the very beginning. A little picture from it. Here's our table of contents. And I'm showing some of the highlights of the book. This is the map of what their Spiderwick Estate looks like and surrounding area. So that will give you some reference when you're reading the book. Okay, and then that's what their house looks like, because they do talk about that. Chapter 1, in which the Grace children get acquainted with their new home. If someone had asked Jared Grace what jobs his brother and sister would have when they grew up, he would have had no trouble replying. He would have said that his brother Simon would be either a veterinarian or a lion tamer. He would have said that his sister Mallory would either be an Olympic fencer or in jail for stabbing somebody with a sword. But he couldn't say what job he would grow up to have, not that anyone asked him, not that anyone asked his opinion on anything at all. So you can see that they're identical twins in the next page. The new house, for instance, Jared Grace looked up at it and squinted. Maybe it would look better blurry. It's a shack, Mallory said, getting out of the station wagon. It wasn't really, though. It was more like a dozen shacks that had been piled on top of one another. There were several chimneys, and the whole thing was topped off by a strip of iron fence sitting on the roof like a particularly garish hat. It's not so bad, their mother said with a smile that looked only slightly forced. It's Victorian. Simon, Jared's identical twin, didn't look upset. He was probably thinking of all the animals he could have now, actually considering what he'd packed into the tiny bedroom in New York. Jared figured it would take a lot of rabbits and hedgehogs and whatever else was out there to satisfy Simon. Come on, Jared, Simon called. Jared realized that they had all crossed to the front steps and he was alone on the lawn, staring at the house. You see the door knocker there? The doors were a faded gray worn with age. The only traces of paint were an indeterminate cream, stuck deep in crevices and around the hinges. A rusted ram's head door knocker hung from a single heavy nail at its center. Their mother fit a jagged key into the lock, turned it, and shoved hard with her shoulder. The door opened into a dim hallway. The only window was halfway up the stairs, and its stained glass panes gave the walls an eerie reddish glow. That sounds spooky. It's just like I remember, she said, smiling. Only crappier, said Mallory. Their mother sighed but didn't otherwise respond. The hallway led into a dining room, a long table with faded water spots which was the only piece of furniture. The plaster ceiling was cracked in places and a chandelier hung from frayed wires. Why don't you three start bringing things in from the car, their mother said. Into here, Jared asked. Yes, into here. Their mother put down her suitcase on the table, ignoring the eruption of dust. If your great aunt Lucinda hadn't let us stay, I don't know where we would have gone. You should be grateful. No pictures on this page, but here we are. None of them said anything. Try as he might, Jared didn't feel anything close to grateful. Ever since their dad moved out, everything had gone bad. He'd messed up at school. The fading bruise over his left eye wouldn't let him forget it. But this place was the worst yet. Jared, his mother said as he turned to follow Simon out to unload the car. What? His mother waited until the other two were down the hall before she spoke. This is a chance to start over for all of us, okay? Jared nodded grudgingly. He didn't need her to say the rest of it. Only that reason he hadn't gotten kicked out of school was because they were moving anyway. Another reason he was supposed to be grateful, only he wasn't. Outside, Mallory had stacked 2 suitcases on top of a steamer trunk. I heard she's starving herself to death. Aunt Lucinda? She's just odd, said Simon, old and crazy. But Mallory shook her head. I heard Mom on the phone. She was telling Uncle Terence that Aunt Lucy thinks men bring her food. What do you expect? She's in a nut house, Jared said. Mallory went on like she hadn't heard him. She told the doctors the food she got was better than anything he'd ever tasted. You're making that up. Simon crawled into the back seat and opened one of the suitcases. Next page. Mallory shrugged. If she dies, this place is going to get inherited by someone, and we are going to have to move again. Maybe we can go back to the city, Jared said. Fat chance, said Simon. He took out a wad of tube socks. Oh no, Jeffrey and Lemon Drop chewed their way loose. Mom told you not to bring the mice, Mallory said. She said you would have normal animals now. If I let them go, they'd be stuck in a glue trap or something, said Simon, turning a sock inside out. One finger sticking out of a hole. Besides, you brought all of your fencing junk. It's not junk, Mallory growled, and it's not alive. Shut up, Jared took a step toward his sister. Just because you've got one black eye doesn't mean I can't give you another one. Mallory flipped her ponytail as she turned toward him. She shoved a heavy suitcase into his hands. Go ahead and carry that if you're so tough, even though Jared knew he might be bigger and stronger than her someday. When she wasn't 13 and he wasn't 9, it was hard to picture. Jared managed to lug the suitcase inside the door before he dropped it. He figured he could drag the rest of it if he had to, and no one would be the wiser, so he's going to drag it. Alone in the hallway in the house, however, Jared no longer remembered how to get to the dining room. 2 different hallways split off of this one, winding deep into the middle of the house. Mom, although he'd meant to call out loudly, his voice sounded very soft, even to himself. So we're going to end it there. It's a long chapter, but make sure you come on down and check out the series. Book 2 is The Seeing Stone. Then we have Lucinda's Secret, The Ironwood Tree, and The Wrath of Mulgarath. So thank you for joining us for another First Chapter Fridays, and I will see you Monday for story time. Have a good weekend.